But you know, Brian, what you can watch on basic cable right here in the good old United States of America, and that's the biography episodes or series that they've been doing over on the AEW network, as you call it, the A&E network.
You did too.
It's well, I've done it in the past, but now I'm making mockery of you because it makes me feel better about myself as a person. But this past week's was on the British Bulldog, and I enjoyed this because I like Davey, and I spent more time around him than I have most of the subjects, of the season. So I had a fond spot in my heart for Davey, and I think Shawn Michaels, believe it or not, summed it up best in one of the little sound bites right at the opening of the program. He was unbelievably talented without even trying. And that was the theme of a lot of the program. He was a big kid, and he didn't take anything seriously. And he was always laughing, always joking. I wasn't even there. It was Owen. And I've told a story about when Jack Lanza would just die laughing at him, and he'd just come and he'd say, "Fucking Davey." Jack would go over and say, "Davey, you got to do a promo." And now bear in mind, the British Bulldog would have been a main event guy in the company for much of the previous fucking 10 years. And he'd go, "For what? Like, if it's unheard of, I should have to do a promo. For what?" And Jack would come over laughing like he's astonished he's got to do a fucking promo after 10 years. But anyway, it was good to see Georgia, his daughter, and Harry, his son, and Diana. Jesus Christ, she hasn't changed. She hasn't aged a day in however many years. She still looks good. She is one person that I don't look better than these days.
Hey, based on your expertise, because I've never had anyone answer this, is it a Calgary accent or is it a Hart family accent?
It's a Hart family accent because you can close your eyes, and I mean, Stu had not only the Hart accent, but a distinctive way of speaking. But with a lot of the brothers or the daughters or the sisters or the mamas or whatever, and the papas, you can close your eyes and not really know which one is speaking, and it's hard to pick out. But I mean, Canadian people and Calgary people do have accents, but this is the Hart family. They all have a similar audible trait in their voice. I don't know. But anyway, I like the old footage that they found. There's a bunch out there. I mean, because it seems like in England, because that was network television, they saved a lot of that 70s stuff. Because 10 or 15 years ago now, a guy had sent me a bunch of early Dynamite and Davey Boy from England. And of course, Dynamite was, the Dynamite Kid because he was 15 or 16 years old. And then a couple years later, Davey Boy turns pro when he's 15 and he's young David. They had a, British tradition over there with that kind of thing. But they moved along fairly quickly. We weren't going to get a giant World of Sport retrospective here, but there was some nice footage of them when they were skinny as rails, both of them, Dynamite and Davey in Calgary. And that was Norman Frederick Charles, the Royal Kangaroo that
I didn't realize
Dynamite
that
was working with the beard and the multicolored. He still had the same multicolored tights like 10 years later when he came to Georgia. And that's what, I mean, Brett and Diana and everybody talked about Dynamite ribbing Davey because Davey was his younger cousin. Davey looked up to him. Dynamite was in the business first. When he gets him in Calgary, he comes to live with him. But he's doing the shit where he's feeding him the X-Lax, chocolate chip cookies, and he got him into steroids or pills or everything else probably that he'd ever gotten into. And finally, Brett had to take Davey Boy away from Dynamite's house and move him in with him to protect him. And I've heard that because a lot of the guys, Danny Davis and Wayne Ferris, a lot of guys from Tennessee at one point or another worked Calgary. And they said that Dynamite, was a great talent in the ring, but goddamn it, he was trouble if you were his friend, and he was trouble if you were against him. because you don't want to be on the wrong side of him. But at the same point, the fucking shit he did to his friends for ribs was fucked up.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, not to excuse any of it. And a lot of this ribbing is just awful. But it's one thing pulling a prank on one of the other boys just to get a reaction from the locker room. He put all that X-Lax in his drink at home. It's just them sitting there by themselves.
Yeah, he's just doing it to him in his house. Just like, fuck Davey, it'll be great. And, of course, the Diana and Davey Boy fall in love, even though Diana's the daughter of the promoter, and it seems to work out that way, especially in the Hart family, because everybody married wrestlers. But I guess, again, they're moving quickly. They mentioned that the Bulldogs had gotten over big in Japan and then debuted in the WWF in '85. And boy, when you look at the footage back to back in that short of a period of time, Brian, isn't it amazing from Davey and Dynamite's natural frames? And they were both athletic. Obviously, they could do all that shit regardless of what their bodybuilding status was. But their natural frames when they were kids, and then by the time they got to the WWF, they were both 75 pounds, 80 pounds easily over. And Davey was 5'10", maybe, and I think he was maybe an inch taller than Dynamite, but they were just huge.
I think he was a few inches taller than Dynamite, but the other thing is, forget about when they were teenagers, and that used to be a thing in the magazines when Davey Boy got real big in like 91. Here's young David, and then here's what he looks like now. That's when he's 15. Look at the Bulldogs in like 82, and then look at them in 85.
Yeah.
They're Dynamite's twice the size that he was.
And I mean, there's an element of growing up, but holy crap. But anyway, so then, and help me out with this, because you're not only the savant, but the 80s WWF expert. They talked about the Dynamite Kid's back injury in kind of vague terms, as back was bothering him. And then they kind of said, out of loyalty, Davey Boy stuck with Dynamite and they went back to Calgary. What was that first time they were out? What the Bulldogs' departure? Was that the thing with the Rougeaus?
Well, yeah, two different things. At the beginning of 87, there's house show footage. I think it was Orton and Morocco versus the Bulldogs. Something simple like Dynamite running to the ropes and Morocco putting his knee to his back when he hits the rope. Caused him to go down. It triggered whatever the back injury was. That's why shortly after that, they lost the belts to the Hart Foundation. And the story has always been, because the introduction's not on TV, that Dynamite was carried to the ring on Davey Boy's back for the title change. And then he got attacked by the Hart Foundation. And then in 88, Kurt Hennig was ribbing, I think, the Bulldogs. And then the Bulldogs thought it was the Rougeaus. No, or maybe it was the other way. It was ribbing the Rougeaus, and whatever it was, everything with the Bulldogs and the Rougeaus happened. And then they finished up Survivor Series 88. Vince made them shake hands, made them work together, and then they finished up at the Survivor Series.
And then the poor Bulldogs went back to Calgary, and there was barely a Calgary to go back to. And Dynamite is the one that, had committed the assault and with intent to commit mayhem. And he wasn't going to go back, but he didn't want Davey to go back. And Davey said, I got to. And apparently that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Dynamite never spoke to him again.
Well, the other thing, too, is they never really had a chance in Calgary. Not that they were going to light up business, because it was kind of impossible at that time.
But it was gone at that point.
But they went back and they started doing some hot stuff. Bulldog versus Bulldog. That's a big thing. Ed Whalen killed it. Ed Whalen wouldn't allow some of the stuff to air on TV, I don't think. So you couldn't even do the one thing you could do. You couldn't do that.
You couldn't even do the one thing that you could do, because you couldn't do that. But what he could do was come back, Davey Boy, to the WWF and get over big as a single, especially in England, which led to the SummerSlam 92 Wembley Intercontinental title match, and the famous confrontation with Brett and the family picking sides and blah blah blah. And they mentioned he had a staph infection in his knee and went into the match anyway. But again, that's the thing I was going to mention at the top of the program when Shawn Michaels said unbelievably talented without even trying. There was the time if Davey knew that it was, he could pick his spots, right? If it was the Hart family, somebody that he could go with, Owen, Brett, Shawn, if he was motivated because he knew that he could have a great match with these fucking guys, then he would turn it on. But if it was, I mean, like, remember the time where they sent the fucking headhunters, the two squat fellows that weighed 400 pounds apiece down to the ring, and the first thing that Davey did was body slam one of them, killed the whole gimmick that they had. And he and Owen would pop each other if they were in there with, somebody they weren't going to be able to get much out of, right? And you would even see when Davey would look up at you every once in a while, if he was in there with somebody, if it was Mabel, you would just see the look on his face would say everything. What the fuck am I doing here? What the fuck is going on with these? If they'd mess something up, he'd just give that look. It's hard to describe, but it fit Davey, right? So in this SummerSlam match and with Brett, I mean, he was fantastic. Remember the run that I managed him in 94, 95? He had that incredible match with Brett on pay-per-view. He had the two matches with Shawn because the Beware of Dog went off the air because of the thunderstorm, the power outage in South Carolina.
I think it was 95, 96, wasn't it?
Well, I'm okay. I managed him in 94, 95 and into 96, right? I think we started 94. Nevertheless, maybe it started in 95. Point being, he had a great match with Brett. He had a couple great matches with Shawn. He had, and then that match with Diesel. Remember the WWF title match at an In Your House with fucking Diesel? And they weren't stylistically a match, and Davey wasn't motivated because what's he going to do with fucking Nash? And it was brutal to the point where I went back afterwards and saw Vince. As Vince, I'd just like to apologize. I was involved in that. And he's like, oh, pal, what's the matter? I said, it didn't set the standard for a fucking world title match, is what it didn't do. But that's the thing. But you could see also, this was 92 at that Wembley match. They're taking those bumps. That ring was fucking concrete. No wonder those guys were on pills or weren't taking bumps at house shows and everything before the modern era. It's like wrestling on a frying pan. But anyway, then he got, as soon as the SummerSlam 92 match happened, he got in trouble with the drug test and he went to WCW for a year, but then he came back and we had the run that I just talked about. And then he joined the Hart Foundation because now it's him and Owen and Pillman's there and Brett. And they started the Canada Hart Foundation faction versus DX and the Americans and blah, blah, blah. And the Canadian Stampede, I was there that night. Amazing atmosphere for the 10-man tag. And that was something that, you could only have done that because of the long history of territory wrestling and the Hart family involvement in a town like that. There's very few places, maybe nowhere by that point, where you could have gotten the same kind of response for the local territory wrestling the Von Erichs. It would have been past that point in Dallas, the Grahams, whatever, but they brought back nostalgia for one point in time there. And then Montreal happens. And that's Davey Boy immediately quit because, I mean, he stood up for Dynamite. He stood up for everybody. So he immediately quit. And Owen, we've talked about this, pretty much didn't want to come back either, but they didn't want to lose Vince didn't want to lose all three of them. And he knew Brett was going. And Davey, unfortunately, because of his various issues that he had and the drug test, they knew out of the two of them, between Davey and Owen, they didn't mind Davey going. But they wanted to keep Owen because he didn't want to lose all three. And that's when they tore up, I think, Owen's contract for $250,000 a year and gave him one for $400,000 a year guaranteed. And that was 25 years ago. So And anyway, we've covered that in previous programs, but at that point, going back to WCW in that shape, in that state of mind under those conditions, one would have thought that he'd be gold because Brett was there, the highest paid guy in the company, but they botched Brett up from the start. And he got hurt. And when the one thing that I've felt bad about when they showed a clip of Davey Boy in WCW to illustrate that, well, by that point, Davey wasn't at his best, it was against Steve Mongo McMichael. And I'm not trying to speak ill of McMichael because he's sick right now, but everything they showed Davey doing because he wasn't at his best could be attributed to McMichael's greenness in the profession at that point in time. But even Bischoff said the biggest problem with their drug tests there weren't crack or cocaine or heroin or whatever, is prescription pills. And then Davey Boy takes the bump on the trap door for the Ultimate Warrior. They put a trap door in the goddamn ring. And it was a stupid fucking idea. And didn't tell everybody, apparently, and he ended up on morphine. And remember, his sister died at that point. Remember, he had dedicated the time he was supposed to win, what was it, the European title or some belt?
Yeah, against Shawn. They didn't tell that story in there.
Yeah, they sure didn't tell that. He had dedicated the win to his sister who had some type of flesh-eating bacteria disease or something. I can't remember what, because they had all kinds of sickness in their extended family with different points in time. But they told him he was going to win it, so he dedicated it to his sister who was dying. And then Michaels wouldn't do the job, made him switch the finish. He didn't win, and then she died. So anyway, then WCW fires him. And, and then there we go. And it just, and that's another example of, unfortunately, at that point in time, there were no more territories. When you'd been to both the big companies, your choice then was the indies. I don't think Davey was, equipped at that time with his personal issues, or also just he had never done indies before. He had been with pretty much WCW, the WWF, or worked in Calgary in Japan for his whole career. And I know he did some, but I don't think that would have been a long-lasting deal for him. But anyway, and I can't remember now what year it was that he passed away, but he didn't outlive Owen, ironically enough, by that long. So, it's another, at least this one was not so cross-pollinated with all the other shows that we've been seeing, where we'd heard a lot of the stories as we've been talking about. We'd seen a lot of the clips. There was some new stuff in this because they hadn't concentrated on Davey as much as they had on a lot of the other guys. So I enjoyed seeing some of the stuff, but it, again, it's just a shame that, a lot of sadness, early demises, and substance abuse issues within a lot of these biographies, no matter who's producing them. Your thoughts?
It's interesting, too, the story Bret Hart told about George Scott wanting the Bulldogs because Vince was asking about them. That's Vince wanting someone just based purely off Japan. And remember, they were part of the deal when Stu sold Calgary. Vince had to give jobs to the son-in-laws. Yeah. And then the Bulldogs left. And then they left New Japan. And then they signed with All Japan. And that's why the beginning of '85, there were Japanese wrestling magazines with the front cover. It almost looks like an ambush. Like the photographer must have just jumped out and been like, "We're here, pose." Vince shaking hands with Giant Baba. It was to negotiate on the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and do you think that Vince even had an inkling then that he wanted to get some kind of foothold, some kind of way more than maybe what he ever got in Japan? And he was trying to stock up some of their favorites too?
I don't know, but I mean, Hogan was the biggest American star in New Japan, and he got Hogan. The Bulldogs were the biggest junior heavyweight team, and then they stopped being junior heavyweights.
He ended up with the Funks in 1985.
Got the Funks, Terry and Haas in 1985, 86. And Jimmy Jack. Don't forget Jimmy Jack Funk.
Jimmy, oh, Jimmy Jack, when are you coming back?
All right, well, that was the Davey Boy Smith British Bulldog.
You weren't anxious to cut it off until I started singing.
Yeah. Right.
Well, at least you admit it. But the thing is, the calling card that Davey had through a lot of his life was his physical fitness. Brian, he wasn't just somebody sitting back there eating a bucket of greasy fried chicken from the gas station. He took care of his body. He lifted the weights, and what's more, he ate good chef-crafted meals. I mean, that's all you do is you turn around and Yokozuna would have a bucket of chicken and I'd have a triple cheeseburger from Wendy's, and there would be Davey Boy Smith eating a chef-crafted meal. They had crafted it right there for him, had it in a little tin mess kit type of apparatus is what he did. He carried it around. The chef had crafted it that morning at the hotel. Now, you might not say out there in podcast land, you might not say that you've got enough money to have a chef follow you around, sleep in your hotel room at night, and craft you meals. Well, I say finay to that, because you don't need that anymore. Because now, thanks to our friends at Factor, ladies and gentlemen, you can have some chefs that you don't even need to pay that will craft your meals for you according to what you need to be eating for your nutritional values and your dietitian-approved requirements. This stuff, it's all about science. Consider yourself a guinea pig in the name of science, ladies and gentlemen, because our friends at Factor have a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular things like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, Vegan and Veggie, all meals that are already crafted by those chefs and in a container and ready for you to heat up in whatever faction you want or fashion you want.
That's right. In a container, DeVito.
In a container. So you can put it in the oven, you can put it in the microwave, you can set it out on the sidewalk and let the sun bake it, folks. And if you like things a little on the rare side, I'd recommend that. Either that or put it on your car's engine underneath the hood.
Don't do that. No, not one way or another. Why don't we stick with microwave or oven as recommended?
Okay, well, I haven't tried the air fryer yet. We're not sure about that. But if you're looking for gourmet meals, try meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, and asparagus. All those are premium ingredients. It's what they mix them up and how they combine them that counts, folks. And these are no fuss and no mess meals, because they've eliminated the hassle of prepping and cooking and cleaning up. You heat the stuff up, you eat it out of the container, you throw the container in the garbage. Then you take the garbage out to the other garbage. Then once a week, you take that garbage out to the road where the garbage truck of all the garbage picks up that garbage and takes it to the dump. That's your whole cleanup. Shouldn't take more than an hour, hour and a half a day. And it's tailored to your schedule. You can customize your weekly meals with the flexibility that you need to get as much or as little as you need, and you can pause or reschedule to suit your lifestyle. Let's say, for example, next week you're going to be busy. You're not going to have time to eat for 5 to 7 days. So you tell them, look, I want 72 meals, but I'm going to eat them all in 1 week. They send you this big bunch, and you just start gorging yourself. You go to fucking town. You wouldn't stop eating like your life depends on it, because you know that for a whole week next week, you're not going to have the time to eat. They'll work with you on this, folks. Have they worked with you on this yet, Brian?
They have delivered me some fine chef-crafted meals, which I enjoy. The family's enjoyed. Grilled chicken, sweet potato mash, broccolini, all the ingredients, all the vegetables, all the health, all the chef-crafted.
All the health?
All the chef-crafted craftabilities that one could ask for.
Did you like the Parmesan and sun-dried tomato chicken?
Tomato. Oh my God.
It's easy to make. The Parmesan and sun-dried tomato chicken penny. And the roasted garlic chicken with green beans and sour cream and onion mashed potatoes was on my list here, and it has the microwave or conventional oven directions. It's prepared It's ready to go. You eat it, and then you wash your hands of the whole situation. And folks, they are also celebrating Earth Day all month long. That means it's Earth Month. And if you look out for the Earth Month Eats badge on their menu, you will get meals with the lowest carbon footprint. That means that not only is there as little coal as possible in your dinner, in your foodstuffs, but no one has stepped on it, at least as far as we're aware. So that's the Earth Month.
No one has stepped on your food. You don't have to worry about that.
Well,
ever.
Sometimes you find a hiking, heel print of a hiking boot.
Not in Factor.
On top of your canned ham.
That's maybe the one where you get your tomato sauce or whatever you were talking about, but not from Factor.
Well, to make an excuse on it, head to factormeals.com/JCE50 and use the code JCE50. You're going to get 50% off your first box of food, plus 20% off your next box of food. Somehow or another, that's 70% off of something. But again, the code JCE50 at factormeals.com/JCE50, not only 50% off your first box, 20% off your next box. The next thing they're going to do is pay you to take it.
Well, they won't do that. And there's a weird way to end the spot here. You have to pay them, but there's a promo code, and it's great food, and it's worth it. Factor, what's that promo code, Jim?
JCE50. You have to pay them, but not much, and it's worth every penny that you're going to save and not pay.
That's right.
Well, what in the world? I'll do it again.
Which world is this you're speaking of?
What in the world, Brian, are you going to be doing over at the Arcadian Vanguard network this week with your array of programs?
Another fine week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, and information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon on a great run of great episodes. Just recently, Mike Rogers, a friend of this show, was on that show. Shut Up and Wrestle, that is, talking about Portland wrestling history.
And boy, did he show out.
And of course, his new book, or his recent book about the encyclopedia of Portland wrestlers. Coming up soon, something we talked about, the WWE Titan Towers Roundtable this week. Check it out at suawpod.com, or look for Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget about the wrestling news. Each and every day, get your wrestling news for free at thewrestlingnews.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Here, the daily wrestling morning newscast for free from the Wrestling News. Look for Arcadian Vanguard's The Wrestling News. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Yeah, we're getting to the end of the show here, folks. Go through the archives at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Sorry for the people asking, no opening day Star Wars this year. A lot of things happening behind the scenes that have been eating up my time, but more 605 being worked on, so stay tuned.
It's a work in progress.
The Mothership!